That night in Brentwood, Los Angeles, a small Spanish-style house went quiet in a way that felt unnatural. No engines, no laughter, no crowd outside the gate. Just the thin glow of a bedroom light leaking beneath a door, and a lock turned from the inside. Marilyn Monroe, the woman America once treated like an untouchable icon, was slipping out of reach inside her own home. How could someone watched so closely vanish into silence within a handful of hours? Why did her final night become a chain of phone calls, broken contact, and moments where no one could say for certain what state she was truly in? And why, even now, decades after an official conclusion, does the same question keep returning, louder than ever? What really happened in Marilyn's final hours? There is the larger problem. Marilyn's death was never just a private tragedy. It became a national question. But there's a second, equally unsettling problem. If the people closest to her sensed danger, why did every safety net fail on the one night it mattered most? Tonight, we slow the clock down, minute by minute, call by call, door by door, following the final hours of Marilyn Monroe, and the details many believe were never fully explained. When Marilyn Monroe's death was confirmed in the early hours of August 5, 1962, the United States seemed to freeze. Emergency bulletins cut into regular programming. Newspaper presses rushed to print a name so familiar it felt permanent: Marilyn. The shock wasn't only that she had died, it was how she had died. A woman defined by spotlights, red carpets, and an immortal smile was found alone, in silence, behind a locked bedroom door. For the American public, the contrast was too sharp to process all at once. Within hours, headlines began to shift in tone, from grief to suspicion, from mourning to questions. Was this simply a private tragedy, or the unsettling end of a system that built a perfect image and abandoned the human being beneath it? Hollywood responded with careful restraint. Some colleagues spoke publicly of their sorrow. Others said nothing at all. Meanwhile, fans gathered outside the Brentwood home, leaving flowers, candles, and photographs, as if trying to fill the sudden void left behind. Marilyn's death quickly escaped the boundaries of a personal loss. It became a cultural shockwave, a story everyone thought they understood, until they looked closer and realized something didn't quite add up. Before the world ever called her Marilyn Monroe, there was Norma Jean, a girl raised in instability, where home was less a place than a temporary condition. A missing father, a mother battling illness, and years of being moved from one situation to the next taught her an early lesson. Survival sometimes meant becoming what other people wanted to see. Hollywood discovered Norma Jean as potential. And what it offered wasn't only opportunity, it was a uniform. Blonde hair, curves, a smile, and a role that extended far beyond the screen. Marilyn Monroe wasn't just a new name. It was an identity engineered for easy consumption, an American fantasy packaged in a way the public could adore. But the trap was this: the world loved the sex symbol, then demanded the woman remain frozen inside that pose. You could be desirable, playful, wanted, but not complicated, not angry, not aging, not serious in a way that challenged the audience. Each time Marilyn tried to step beyond the bombshell frame, the media dragged her back by shrinking her into headlines about what she wore, who she dated, whether she was late, as if the real person behind the image didn't deserve to be asked about at all. Fame, then, became a form of surveillance. Millions of eyes owned Marilyn like a cultural product. And Norma Jean, the woman underneath, had to keep breathing in a space that felt smaller every year. From the final hour's perspective, it becomes clear. This isn't only a star's story. It's the story of a human being turned into a symbol for so long that living normally became a luxury. The sex symbol image was a golden cage. It brought money, access, attention, but it also took away the right to be fragile. When Marilyn was exhausted, it wasn't treated as exhaustion. It was labeled difficult. When she was anxious, it wasn't treated as crisis. It was dismissed as drama. In an industry where schedules are law, instability isn't seen as a signal to help. It's seen as a risk to manage. And being desired is not the same as being loved. Marilyn could silence a room by simply entering it, yet real closeness was rare. The more famous she became, the more she was treated like an image that had to perform on command. If she needed rest, suspicion followed. If she fell behind, blame arrived. Empathy often came last, after damage was already done. Inside that pressure, medication becomes a shortcut. It doesn't always begin as self-destruction. Sometimes it begins with one simple need: sleep, quiet, a night without the mind attacking itself. But when pills provide what life refuses to allow, dependence can form quietly, and a vulnerable person can slide into a cycle. The more exhausted she is, the more she needs relief. The more relief she needs, the less control she has. The less control she has, the more the system calls her the problem. By the early 1960s, Marilyn's life held a sharp contradiction. On paper, she remained powerful, yet in practice, she was treated as a liability. And when an artist lives under constant suspicion, collapse doesn't arrive as a single explosion. It arrives as erosion, day after day, until one night comes when every so-called safety net slips. Marilyn's final weeks didn't feel like an ending that had been written in advance. They felt like a stretch of days where everything was trying to restart one last time. A final attempt to pull her back toward the light, even as her body and mind were growing too tired to pay the cost. On the outside, America still viewed her through the familiar lens. Marilyn, the sex symbol, the magazine cover smile, the name that could ignite a box office with nothing more than a poster. But privately, she was living with another kind of pressure. The pressure of proving. Proving she still had control. Proving she was still reliable in the eyes of the studio world. Proving she wasn't a risk drifting out of orbit. There were unfinished projects, shifting schedules, appointments moved, promises of "this time it'll be fine" repeated in private conversations. In Marilyn's world, those words weren't just polite reassurance. They were a lifeline. Because if she lost the work, the role, the place she held inside the machine, she didn't only lose income. She lost one of the last layers protecting her from emptiness. People close to her could sense how fragile the period had become. Across various accounts and recollections, Marilyn seemed to cling to thin strands of hope. A second chance, a return to a set, the feeling that she was still needed. But running alongside that hope were signs that were harder to ignore. Tension, sleeplessness, reliance on medication to shut her body down at night, and waves of anxiety that made even a beautiful Brentwood home feel insufficient as a refuge. By day, Brentwood could look like quiet perfection. Trees, fences, clean streets, a soft wind moving through a calm neighborhood. But for Marilyn, that home in her final days could feel like a secondary stage, one without applause. No cameras to carry emotion. No lights to make sadness feel smaller. Only long hours and one looping thought. If I can't return as the version they want, who am I allowed to be? There were meetings with doctors and therapy sessions, conversations that sounded simple in purpose. Keep Marilyn safe, keep her stable, keep her sleeping, keep her moving forward. But the more her life was managed by others, the more unsettling the question became. Was the network protecting her, or quietly increasing her dependency, her reliance, her loss of personal control? In the final days, the line between care and control can be separated by one small decision. And then there was the pressure of the media, the kind that doesn't need to knock before it enters. People discussed her like she was a multi-episode storyline. Is she okay today? Will she come back tomorrow? Will she act out again next week? A human being in crisis was being treated as entertainment. And once you know you are being watched that way, it becomes harder to speak honestly. Harder to admit you are afraid. In the closest days before the final night, Marilyn's story carries a strange tension. It feels like there might still be a way back, and yet it also feels like a shadow is already waiting. Different reports suggest she remained in contact with familiar people, had conversations, mentioned plans, yet any stability, if it existed at all, was paper thin. Some later described her as trying to appear normal, trying to sound fine, trying to stand upright so no one would have to deal with her. But that effort can be the most dangerous sign of all. Because people who have lived under bright lights learn how to hide their collapse until the last possible moment. They know how to soften a sentence, change a subject, convince the person across from them that everything is just temporary exhaustion. And if you are Marilyn Monroe, someone trained her entire life to turn emotion into performance, hiding can become instinct. This is where the last moment's lens becomes unavoidable. Tragedy rarely happens in a single explosive moment. It happens through small missed chances. A call not answered in time. An appointment postponed. A warning treated as, she'll be fine like always. A decision that sounds harmless. Leave her alone, let her sleep, talk in the morning. And then the calendar turned to August 4th, 1962. From the outside, it didn't look like a final day. No sirens, no public catastrophe. Just a house in Brentwood, the most famous woman in America, and a chain of hours moving forward in a way that people still argue about decades later. Because in those hours, was Marilyn truly alone? Or were others closer than the world ever realized? August 4th, 1962 began like a normal day by Hollywood standards. Plans still existed, people still came and went. Small appointments gave the impression that life was still moving forward. Marilyn was at her home in Brentwood, the Spanish-style house meant to be a refuge. But in her final days, it could feel like a room where silence echoed louder than peace. In the morning, according to widely cited reports, she met photographer Lawrence Schiller to discuss the possibility of Playboy publishing nude photographs taken during the filming of Something's Got to Give. She received a massage, spoke to friends by phone, and signed for deliveries. In the house that day were her housekeeper Eunice Murray and her publicist Patricia Newcomb, who had stayed overnight. Newcomb later said there was tension between them because Marilyn had barely slept the night before. From the outside, it didn't look like a final day. There were no obvious sirens in the story yet. But that kind of normalcy can be the most dangerous mask of all. Because when someone has spent a lifetime performing, they can make the world believe they are fine, even while something inside them is quietly draining away. By late afternoon, around 4:30 p.m., her psychiatrist, Ralph Greenson, arrived for a therapy session. And here, the story begins to narrow in a way that matters. Greenson asked Newcomb to leave. The circle around Marilyn tightened. Before he left around 7 p.m., Greenson asked Eunice Murray to stay overnight to keep Marilyn company. Around 7 to 7:15 p.m., Marilyn received a call from Joe DiMaggio Jr. He told her he had broken up with a girlfriend Marilyn disliked. DiMaggio Jr. later said he detected nothing especially alarming in Marilyn's voice. No dramatic goodbye, no clear confession of despair, just an ordinary conversation. Exactly the kind that makes it harder to believe everything could end a few hours later. Around 7:40 to 7:45 p.m., Marilyn called Greenson to share the news about the breakup. And then, around 8 p.m., she retired to her bedroom. From this point on, the timeline starts to shift into true final hours territory. Broken contact, rising unease, and small decisions that begin to weigh like stone. One of the most discussed moments from that evening involves a call from Peter Lawford, President Kennedy's brother-in-law, who was trying to persuade Marilyn to attend a party. Lawford later said he became alarmed because she sounded as though she were under the influence of drugs, and a farewell-like line has been repeatedly attributed to her. But this is where a documentary voice must be careful. Quoted lines can thicken in the telling over decades, and this entire thread sits inside a long-running zone of dispute. What is clearer is that Lawford was worried enough to reach out to others, yet those attempts to connect did not produce an immediate, decisive rescue. The night moved forward. Then, in the early morning hours of August 5th, around 3:30 a.m., Eunice Murray woke up with the feeling that something was wrong. She saw light under Marilyn's bedroom door, but couldn't get a response. The door was locked. She called Greenson. According to the commonly cited account, she looked through a window and saw Marilyn lying face down on the bed, nude beneath a sheet, still clutching a telephone receiver. Greenson arrived shortly afterward, broke a window to enter, and found Marilyn dead. Around 3:50 a.m., Marilyn's physician Hyman Engelberg arrived and officially confirmed the death. At 4:25 a.m., the Los Angeles Police Department was notified. In that moment, the bedroom stopped being a celebrity's room. It became a scene, and the story began shifting from private tragedy into public shockwave. And one detail deepens the unease, one reason this story refuses to fade from America's memory. Based on the state of her body when she was discovered, investigators estimated she may have died sometime between roughly 8:30 and 10:30 p.m. the night before. That would mean hours could have passed between the moment death occurred and the moment anyone truly realized it. That gap is where suspicion takes root. In a house where someone stayed overnight, on a night filled with calls and worry, how could so much time pass without a decisive intervention? This is where the sex symbol myth becomes most bitter. The woman the world desired was found holding a phone, as if she had still been clinging to a final thread connecting her to someone outside that room. And the most haunting question isn't simply how she died. It's how many times that night could have turned out differently. If one call had been answered, if one door had been forced sooner, if one decision had been less casual, less delayed, less certain that she'll be fine. Once the police were notified, Marilyn's story changed form. It was no longer a private death inside a Brentwood home. It became an event the entire country had to witness. And no one witnessed it with calm eyes. With Marilyn Monroe, everything was magnified by the weight of the symbol she had become, even death. In the first hours after the news broke, two emotions ran side by side: One was genuine grief. People struggled to accept that the face they knew, the voice they knew, the light they had watched on screen could be extinguished like this. The other emotion was suspicion. Because when an icon dies in silence, the public doesn't only ask what happened. They ask who was there, who knew, and who decided what to do next. Details from the scene quickly turned into fuel for curiosity. A door locked from the inside. A light left on through the night. A telephone in her hand. Bottles of medication. Reported times that didn't line up perfectly from one account to the next. In an ordinary case, those might remain technical details. In Marilyn's case, they became hooks. Each hook carried a question. Each question opened another. The official investigation moved toward a conclusion many found logically possible. An overdose involving barbiturates, ruled as a probable suicide. But the word probable is the kind of word that never closes a door completely. It leaves space. And in Marilyn's story, space becomes a breeding ground. Why probable and not absolute? Why did certain details in later recollections fail to match cleanly? Why did the estimated time of death not align neatly with the moment she was discovered? Who called whom first? Who waited to call the police? In celebrity deaths, what unsettles the public is often not only the final conclusion, but the path taken to reach it. From there, the world began splitting Marilyn's death into competing branches. The first is the personal tragedy branch. In this version, Marilyn is a woman who endured too much for too long, pulled downward by emotional struggle, crushed by professional pressure, increasingly reliant on medication, and finally unable to hold on. It is the most human interpretation, and in many ways, the most painful. Because if it is true, the story requires no villain. It requires only a system, a spiral, and a loneliness no one interrupted in time. The second branch is accidental overdose, death without clear intent. In this version, Marilyn may not have wanted to die at all. She wanted sleep, quiet, a way through one more night. But overlapping prescriptions, exhaustion, and fragile mental state pushed her past a line she didn't mean to cross. This branch generates a different kind of anger. Anger at negligence, at the management of drugs, at how a vulnerable person could be placed in a situation where one small miscalculation becomes fatal. And then there is the loudest branch, the one that refuses to die. Suspicion of a cover-up, of motives, of power. With Marilyn, that branch didn't appear out of nowhere. It appeared because she wasn't only a star. She sat at the intersection of Hollywood, media, and rumors about relationships at the highest levels of American society. The moment that intersection is mentioned, the story changes tone. It stops feeling like one woman's tragedy and begins to feel like something that might threaten reputations far beyond her bedroom door. But this is also where a documentary voice has to step carefully. Because in this territory, truth and embellishment often walk beside each other. A quote can mutate across decades. A small detail can be stretched into proof. A gap in a timeline can be filled with whatever people most want to believe. The goal isn't to chase sensationalism. The goal is to face the central question. What has been confirmed by credible reporting? What remains disputed? And why the public is so hungry to dispute it at all? And that hunger is the real aftershock of Marilyn Monroe. No matter which branch you believe, you can't deny that the story contains shadows large enough to keep questions alive forever. The people who were there told it their way. The people far away told it their way. The press told it in the way that sold best. And the public, caught in the middle, did what it always does when certainty is unavailable. It tried to assemble the pieces and ask which pieces might be missing. Her death triggered something strange in American culture. Grief mixed with obsession. Sadness mixed with a kind of collective guilt. The country had consumed her image for years, desired it, mocked it, judged it, turned it into a product. And then, when she died, America was forced to look back and ask, did we love her? Or did we only love the version we invented for consumption? Maybe that's why the story never truly closes. Marilyn Monroe died, but Marilyn, the symbol, did not. She kept living in films, in fashion, in advertising, in endless argument. And every time the symbol is revived, the Brentwood night returns like a wound that never fully heals. Because the biggest question remains unchanged. If this was simply a personal tragedy, why did it leave so much room for doubt? And if it was a tragedy of systems, of missed chances, of decisions made too late in the final night, then the true price Marilyn paid may not have been only her life. 5. After the noise fades, after the breaking news banners, the front page headlines, the decades of argument, what remains is a simple, brutal truth. Marilyn Monroe died at 36, an age when many people are still beginning again, still fixing mistakes, still believing they have time. For Marilyn, 36 became a full stop. And that full stop forced America, whether it wanted to or not, to look back at itself. Because Marilyn was never only a star. She was a symbol manufactured by an industry, and then consumed by a nation. She was the face Hollywood used to sell optimism, the body the media used to sell dreams, the smile the public used to forget its own anxieties. But the closer you look from the vantage point of her final hours, the clearer the tragedy becomes. The tragedy isn't that she was a sex symbol. The tragedy is that she was kept inside that image for so long that many people forgot a human being was still living behind it. And the frightening thing about turning a person into a symbol is that they begin to live on the symbol's rhythm. They become afraid of disappointing the world, afraid of losing love that was never fully attached to their real self, afraid that if they speak honestly, the audience will leave. Marilyn lived with that fear, and she also fought it through real efforts, studying, reading, pushing towards serious craft, trying to reclaim control over her own life. But even that struggle was dragged back beneath the lights of a narrative written by others. Her legacy is complicated. Artistically, she left performances and a camera presence few people can replicate. An ability to make a frame feel brighter simply by being in it, as if the lens had been waiting for her. But the larger legacy lives elsewhere. Marilyn became a living warning about the cost of fame when fame is built on objectification. Her story forces America to ask uncomfortable questions about how it loves its celebrities. Do we love them for who they are, or for what they make us feel? Do we protect them when they weaken, or do we wait for the collapse so we have something new to consume? And when we call someone an icon, do we quietly take away their right to live like a person? From the final hour's perspective, the lesson isn't found in choosing a single theory as the answer. The lesson lives in the gaps, between phone calls, behind a locked door, beneath a strip of light under the bedroom frame, in the way a network that seemed dense still failed to stop someone from slipping out of the world in silence. Sometimes, tragedy doesn't require a conspiracy. Sometimes it only requires long exhaustion, dependency, loneliness, and a series of decisions that sound harmless. Tomorrow, later, she'll be fine. Until one night arrives that cannot be undone. Marilyn Monroe still lives in America's memory, through photographs, films, imitations, quoted lines, and a fascination that refuses to die. But perhaps her most honest legacy is something simpler. She reminds us that behind the symbols we worship, there is always a human being trying to breathe. And if there is one thing worth carrying after slowing the Brentwood night down, it is that final silence, not to feed another rumor, but to remember that a person was there, trying, hoping, wanting to be seen, not as a dream, but as herself.